Chiron on CNN right now. World facing uncertainty as scientists study Omicron variant. So we'll see where this goes. I am, like I said, I'm not freaked out, but, you know, we are a wealthy nation. We have access to more vaccines than we can use. We have shipped more vaccines to other countries in the world, to poor countries in the world, than any other country. We are, I think, you know, leading the world in this regard. And President Biden has called for the World Trade Organization to suspend the patent protections for these vaccines so that they can be manufactured in poor countries around the world, which will ease up the cost and difficulty and logistical challenges of shipping them out of the United States. So all these good things. Meanwhile, there's a labor shortage, if you haven't noticed. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I think, correctly says we don't actually have a labor shortage. We have, in her words, a shortage of dignified jobs. She says we have a dignified job shortage. But Republicans think that they've got a solution to the problem. There are, you know, employers looking for employees and they don't want to pay more money. So what do? Well, hey, let's have 14-year-olds go to work. Yeah, we did that once before in America. You know, this was the the Supreme Court back in the day. So one of the first things that they did, striking. I believe this was right after Franklin Roosevelt became president, was striking down child labor laws. But the story is in the Labor Tribune, labortribune.com. Republican-controlled legislatures in several states have come up with a novel way to stem the effects of an ongoing labor shortage. Loosen child labor laws governing the number of hours or the times the teenagers are allowed to work. And this is 14 and 15-year-olds. Hey, let's just let them go to work. Right? Makes perfect sense, huh? And the Wisconsin Restaurant Association is like, hey, yeah, this is a great idea. Bring in the 14-year-olds. They can serve tables. On the other hand, the AFL-CIO is like, what? And Senator Chris Larson, the Democrat from Milwaukee in Wisconsin, he says, I think if those employers are looking for workers, what frankly the market should dictate is that they should be raising wages and offering additional benefits, which actually works. People will work for you if you provide them with a decent working environment and reasonable pay and benefits. Sylvia Allegretto, who is a labor economist and the co-chair of the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics, told an interviewer at Salon, quote, and by the way, I think this really gets to the nub of this issue right now. She said, a lot of families are in such dire economic conditions that they might agree to send their kids to work because of necessity. But that's the problem, she says. If you get up and go to work every day, you shouldn't be living in poverty. You should not be living in such dire situations. Families should not need their children to work 30, 35 hours a week, which is what they're proposing in some of these states, in order to keep the family's head above water. Children, 14-year-olds should be studying for school. They shouldn't be flipping burgers. Unless it is, you know, as I pointed out, when I was 14 or 15, I was flipping burgers. But it was on, you know, I was limited to, as I recall, it was on Saturdays. I had my Saturdays. But she goes on to note, the increased reliance on American teenagers to work more hours is also leading to a number of negative outcomes for children who are forced into the labor market at younger ages, including higher rates of substance abuse and high school dropouts, research shows. And this is where we have to make a fundamental decision as a nation. Do we want to basically accommodate employers' desire to have low wages and no benefits by telling poor families, yeah, you can send your kids to work 30, 35 hours a week, no problem. Forget about those kids ever growing up to be, you know, really successful. because typically that these days requires at least a college education or, some sort of trade training so that you can get a good union job. Forget about that. Consign your children to a lifetime of poverty, but hey, the employers don't have to pay as much. Do we do that? Do we go the Republican route? Or do we do what the Democrats are saying and structure our country and our economy in such a way that diminishes poverty? I mean, it's crazy that the number of medical bankruptcies in the United States is probably going to be around 1 million this year. And it was probably around 1 million last year. We're not, it takes a couple of years for the numbers to get sorted out and everything, but, it was 640,000 the year before the pandemic. And you got a lot of people who got sick with COVID, ended up in the ICU, have $1 million hospital bill now, and no way to pay it. And yet the number of medical bankruptcies right across the border in Canada, a country that shares a common language with us by and large, culturally is very similar, demographically is similar to us. The number of medical bankruptcies in Canada, 0. The number of medical bankruptcies in Europe, 0. Taiwan, 0. South Korea, 0. Japan, 0. Here in the United States, 1 million. And that's just like one symptom. That's just one little indicator of how screwed up our system is. That if somebody in your family goes gets sick, the entire family can go broke. The other thing that we have is almost $2 trillion worth of student loan debt. Again, you don't find this in other countries. Sure, if you want to go to Harvard or Princeton, maybe you can take on a student loan in these other countries. But, in Germany, all the state universities and colleges are absolutely free. There's over 300,000 foreign students in Germany going to college right now for free. And if you're a German citizen, not only do you get free tuition, but in some cases they will subsidize your books and your rent. Which, by the way, is not unique to Germany. This is common among Western European countries. We're the only country in the world that has saddled an entire generation with student debt. And by the way, prior to the Reagan administration, there was no student debt problem in America. In fact, prior to Reagan becoming governor of California, the entire University of California's college system, one of the best in the world, was entirely free, or damn close to it. Abraham Lincoln, as President of the United States, took federal lands all across the United States and created 56 large tracts of land that could be used, that could be worked for money. They could be logged or they could be farmed, turned into agricultural land or whatever. And that agricultural land could produce revenue, and called these land grant colleges. They were 56 colleges that Lincoln put into place. Michigan State University was one of them, where the college had the ability to make enough money that they could provide free education or very, very cheap education to their students. My mother went to Michigan State University and graduated back in the 1940s, magna cum laude in English, which is why I'm pretty good at English. And she put herself through MSU with a summer job up in Charlevoix, Michigan, where she grew up, as a lifeguard. And on weekends, through the rest of the year, propping and washing airplanes at the Lansing airport. She did that mostly, though, in exchange for flying lessons. But, it was like college was not an issue. We're the only country with this. And so we're looking at this like this is impoverishing families. It's creating a terrible challenge just for daily life. And the solution that the Republicans have is let's let 14-year-olds work, 30 hours a week, instead of letting the market work and essentially having the marketplace force employers to raise wages and benefits. When are these Republicans going to wake up? Nobody is saying, oh, yeah, kids shouldn't have the experience of being in the workplace. I did as a kid. It was a good thing. But it wasn't for subsistence. I wasn't trying to survive. I wasn't trying to support my family. It was a little extra money so I could buy a used car, which I did. For $35, I bought a used car. We'll be back.